Okay, good morning, algebra. Today we're going to begin factoring trinomials. This is day 1. And factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient of 1. So there are trinomials with a leading coefficient of 1, and there are trinomials with a leading coefficient that is greater than 1. So today we will focus on the leading coefficient is equal to 1. So get out your notebook and let's take notes. So basically, we're going to figure out how to undo trinomials, which are quadratics. Trinomials are quadratics. An example would be x squared minus 3x minus 10, and we're going to undo it into their factors. So you're looking for two binomials that multiply together to get the trinomial. And we're going to need to know how to do this in order to solve quadratic equations such as this one. And that means equal to 0, which we'll do in the next unit. Okay, a quadratic trinomial is ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is the form of a quadratic trinomial. Notice that you have a degree of 2, or an exponent of 2. So if you have an exponent of 2, that means it's a quadratic. It's a trinomial. Okay, so you have a is the coefficient of the first term, the x squared term, b is the coefficient that goes with the x, and c is the constant. So what we're going to do, the first thing you want to do is recognize the a, the b, and the c. And for this, a has to be equal to 1. So to factor quadratic trinomials with leading coefficients of 1, there are 3 things you're going to do. First, you're going to find 2 factors of c, so the factors of c that add to make the b. So factors of c that add to make b. These 2 factors will be the second terms in each of your binomial factors. The first term of each binomial factor represents the factors of a. Okay, this may not make any sense, but it will once I show you. Okay, so example number 1. So write down this problem. You have x squared plus 12x plus 20. The first question you always want to ask is there a greatest common factor to factor out? Because if there is, that's always your first step. Okay? In this one, I do not see a greatest common factor. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you, first we're going to list what A is. A, B, and C. That's important. So A, B, and C. So what is A? The coefficient that goes with the x squared. A is 1. And then the coefficient that goes with the x, that's your B. And then the coefficient that goes with C is 20. Okay, so remember what we're going to do is we want to look for numbers that multiply to get 20 and then add to get to 12. So I kind of write this down. This is what I'm looking for. Alright, so I'm going to look for numbers, so I'm going to list the factors of 20 because I want numbers that will multiply to get to 20 and add to get to 12. So I can do 1 times 20, okay, there's no way that could add to 12, 2 times 10, that can add to 12, and 3 times 4, that cannot add to 12. So if I have a positive 2 and a positive 10, those two numbers can add to 12 and multiply to 20. So what you're going to do is you're just going to write down 2 binomials that will multiply to get this trinomial. And when the coefficient is 1, then you will always just write down an x right there. Okay? When the coefficient is 1, you will always write down an x. And then your answers are going to be the plus 2 and plus 10. These are 2 binomials that when I multiply them, I will get this trinomial. And I can check it. It says use FOIL to check. So I can check. So we're going to check on the first few. So let's take x plus 2 times x plus 10 and do FOIL, or you could do the box method. So I would get x squared, then I would get 10x, then I would get plus 2x, and then I would get plus 20. Well, notice these two combine, so I would come back and I would get x squared plus 12x plus 20. And look, this is your trinomial that you started with. So the answer I'm looking for is right there. All right, we have 6 problems today, and let's go. All right, example 2, you'll write it down. The first question you always ask, is there a greatest common factor to factor out? And no, there is not a greatest common factor. Otherwise, that would be the first thing that we would do. Next, we're going to look for, let's see, we have A is equal to 1, B is equal to 5, and C is equal to a negative 14. So we want to look for numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add to positive 5. That's what I'm looking for. Multiplies to negative 14 and adds to 5. So let me list my factors of negative 14. Now remember, a positive plus a negative makes negative 14. So one has to be positive and one has to be negative. So I could do 14, I'm not going to use the signs yet. So 14 times 1 and 7 times 2. 7 times 2 multiplies to get to 14, and it could add to get to 5. But you have to figure out which one is positive and which one is negative. Well, since the 5 is positive, that means that the 7 has to be positive and the negative has to be with the 2. So those are going to be your answers. So the way we write our answer when the leading coefficient is 1 is I just put an x here and I put an x there. And then I'm going to write in my answers as my binomials. So x plus 7 and x minus 2. So that is my answer. Now I'm going to check just to make sure. So over here on the right, I'm going to check. So now I'm going to FOIL. So x squared minus 2x plus 7x minus 14. Combine the like terms, I get x squared plus 5x minus 14. Is that what I started with? Yes. All right, example 3 and 4. So if you're getting the hang of this, you can pause and try this on your own. Otherwise, I'll walk you through a few more. So first, is there a greatest common factor to factor out? No. So no GCF. And then next, I'm going to list my A, B, and C. So A is 1, B is 8, C is negative 20. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to negative 20 and add to 8. So then I list my factors of negative 20. So 20 times 1, 10 times 2, 4, and 5. Now which one of those could possibly add to 8? And that would be the 10 and the 2. Then I just have to figure out which one is positive and which one is negative because it has to be one of each. So if I leave the 10 as positive and I make the 2 negative, 10 plus negative 2, that makes positive 8. So that's going to be my answers. So again, when A is equal to 1, so I have a 1 there, that means these two are x and x. And then I'd get plus 10 and minus 2. And this is your answer. So then I would go and I would use FOIL to check. And so I FOILed and I was able to get the beginning trinomial. All right, let's try another one. Write the problem down. Can you factor out a GCF? No. And A is 1, B is negative 3, and C is 9. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to 9 and add to negative 3. So then I list my nines, my factors that multiply to 9. So it's either 9 and 1 or it's 3 and 3. So this one, it looks like there's no way I can get a negative 3 because either a 9 has to be positive. Both of these either have to be positive or negative. So I could either do negative 9 and negative 1. But if I add that together, I'd get negative 10. Here, 3 and 3 make 6, or if they're both negative, I would get negative 6. So this won't work at all. So this would be an example where we would use the quadratic formula. Okay, so let's move to 5 and 6. Okay, so write down problem number 5. First, can you factor out a GCF? And I say no. And you can see that A is 1, B is negative 1, C is negative 56. So you're looking for numbers, factors that multiply to a negative 56. That means one is positive, one is negative, and adds to a negative 1. So then I would do factors of negative 56. And right away, I know that 7 and 8. So if I have a 7 and an 8, 7 times 8 is 56. So then I have to see positive. One has to be positive, one has to be negative. And since this is a negative 1, that means that the 8 has to be negative. Because when I add a negative 8 to a positive 7, I get negative 1. So my answer would be x plus 7 and x minus 8. And you can FOIL to check to see if we got it right. All right, let's do the last one. Write it down. There's no greatest common factor on this one. And I've written down that A is 1, B is negative 2, C is negative 24. So that means I'm looking for things that multiply to negative 24 but add to negative 2. So let's look at factors of negative 24. So 24 and 1, and that's a positive. One has to be positive, one has to be negative. I could do 12 and 2. And I could do, what else? 8 and 3. And I can do 6 and 4. So it looks to me like 6 and 4 is going to work because the difference of 6 and 4 is 2. So if I make the 6 negative and the 4 positive, added together, that would add to this negative 2. So that's going to be my answer. So I'd put an x here, an x, and I'd be x minus 6, x plus 4. And that's all there is to it. All right, so you'll have an assignment to work on, and hopefully if you have any questions you can ask in class. Thanks.